Ladies and gentlemen, episode 3 of the Flamingo Sundays podcast. Today I have a very special guest. He's a man that's influenced me a lot. He's mentoring me currently, coaching me. He's one of the lads. He actually is wearing a pajama t-shirt in front of me at the moment with the Dream Team on it. It's Ben Handler, mate. Welcome.
Thank you, JH. Thanks for having me.
Mate, absolute pleasure. So, Benny, you've got a pretty inspiring story, I believe. You're still a super young guy. You've done a lot of things. You've been at the head of your game in a business that's probably one of the most competitive businesses in Australia in terms of real estate. And then you've literally flipped that on its head and gone into a completely different sector. Same sort of, business as a whole, but a completely different sector. And now you're the only one in the country doing that, and it's growing rapidly. So, Benny, at a high level, give us a 5-minute rundown. You grew up in Sydney. You went to school. You went to university. From university, where did you go? What's Benny's story?
Well, grew up in Sydney. Then went to a private school.
Right. Pretty
naughty, so got asked to leave very politely. And
similar people.
Yeah. Similar story to you. And then went off to boarding school.
Right.
And from there, I followed the traditional route, which I at that time thought you needed to follow, which was university, do your time, and then once you do your time there, you go get a corporate job, be an employee, and that's where it all started for me. And early on, I studied construction at UNSW.
Right.
Did my thesis there, and then I didn't want to get into construction, so I went straight and worked, and I applied to work at a property funds management development company called Charter Hall.
Right.
So got a job there. The youngest employee at the time, worked there.
How old were you at the time, do you think?
Maybe 21.
Right, so very young.
Yeah, I finished school 17, so I think it was 21, yeah. And then very early on at Charter Hall, I was working with super smart people. But very early on, I realised that I didn't want to be an employee. Like, that was one of my key awareness light bulb moments that I worked out very quickly. Was I was looking at what people were earning at the time they were putting in, the intelligence they had, the value they were adding, and I was like, doesn't stack up. So learned a lot, very grateful for the opportunities, but then after Charter Hall, I wanted to run my own business.
Right.
I wanted more autonomy. I wanted to take more control of my remuneration, and I wanted to have impact at a different level, because at Charter Hall I was working on commercial and resi developments. I didn't get the opportunity to work from the beginning through to the end. And
you would have been on quite a large team, right?
Yeah, and you work with the same consultants, same engineers, same architects, etc.
Right.
So I wasn't meeting a lot of new people, so I didn't really have a network at that time. So I went to the States after Charter Hall, went to California.
Was this for a holiday, or you just decided to pack up and go to the States for a little bit?
Holiday.
Right.
Research business models. I was interested in the States and what they were doing, a lot of innovation, so I just went over there. That's when I met my former business partner, Simon. We researched the buyer's agent business model, saw that it was very prevalent in the States, very common. However, in the States, the buyer's agent gets paid from the seller. It's a 5-6% fee, and it gets divvied between the selling agent and the buyer's agent, if there is a buyer's agent.
Yeah.
So it's a different model here. However, we thought buyers were misrepresented here heavily, and so we decided to come back and press the button and start a buyer's agent business.
And the business was Cohen Handler.
Yeah, Cohen Handler was born then.
Right. So, working at Charter Hall, very young age, obviously quite successful at Charter Hall. So to get in there that young, how many years were you there for?
3.5.
3.5 years. And then one day you just thought, I'm pulling the pin, I'm over this. Was that pretty much it?
Well, 09 came,
right,
and there was redundancies. So I got made redundant.
Right.
And then left.
Okay. So, and then just went to the States. Was that a planned trip in terms of, I'm going to the States to research to start a business? Or was it just like, I've been made redundant, got some cash, let's go on holiday and enjoy life, and that was just a consequence of going over there?
It was exploration into business models. I wanted to explore what entrepreneurs were doing, what models were sexy, what was good. And the intention was to try and pick something up and execute, whether it was over there or here.
Right. And still very young. If you were there for 3.5 years, you're probably 25 or something.
Yeah, I was just under 25.
Right. Okay. And then come back to Australia and decided to start Cohen Handler, which you ran for 9 years or something.
Yeah.
And was probably the biggest buyer's agency in Australia, would you say?
Employment headcount, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Revenue we couldn't match, but I feel we were the biggest in revenue as well. But I mean, I can't prove that.
Okay. So, like, I've had, obviously, you're the third guest on this podcast. We talk to people every single day. It's such a common thing when people go into a job. It's so normal. You go to university, get a job, and then all of a sudden it's, I don't want to have a job anymore. I want to start a business. What gave you the balls, essentially, to go, I don't want to go and get another very, very high-paying corporate job. I'm going to go start a business. And not just a business that had track record in Australia, a business that had zero track record, essentially. And put it all on the line. Like what? Now it's easy to say that I wanted to run a business, but you could have went and got a franchise of a business or started something like that was taken up already in Australia. Like to start a completely fresh business and essentially for your first business as well. Like where did that come from?
It comes down to, I believe, the impact you want to create.
Right.
And how driven you are to execute on that impact you want to create. And you don't know the outcome. The odds were against me. I'd never worked in sales. I was running feasibilities. I wasn't in sales. I'd never worked in sales. I'd never run a business. And I'd never worked in a traditional real estate company, like a sales company. So if you were to look at me and bet on me to win, and then buyer's agent model 10 years ago, mate, it didn't really exist.
Exactly.
So we would sit in front of people in the first year to say, or discuss our value prop as to why you should, and now in a roundabout way, why the fuck would I pay you money? Like looking at us like we were aliens, right?
Yeah.
So the odds were stacked against me, one would say. To answer the question though, I was unconditionally committed to creating change in Australia to give power back to the buyer. I genuinely felt buyers, and I still do, are heavily misrepresented. I didn't think buyers quite understood that vendors have representation from a real estate agent, and real estate agents are obligated to represent their best interests. Buyers are talking to real estate agents who represent the vendor. So I didn't think buyers were aware of that. And so I was ready to go in there and change the game like that.
Right. And you did so. So in the 9 years you were with Cohen Handler, like run me through the business itself, how many employees you had, maybe some revenue numbers. Like it was a pretty big operation, right? Yeah,
over the years that we were going, especially it was just under 10 years that I was there. I left 2 years ago. I resigned 2 years ago. We hit the 8-figure mark, and early on, we had a very profitable business. It was a very profitable business, and the way this model can run is like that.
Right.
You can run it quite lean, I believe, because it's at such a low maturity stage of the life cycle. There's not a lot of competition. And so, as you're finding, I'm sure now, is you can get business through referrals, and there's ways to build your business organically, which doesn't require a lot of capital.
Agreed.
So we had a very profitable business. We had a very good business. A lot of challenges, like a lot of falling on my face, bad hires. I didn't come from a sales background, so I was thrown right into the cold front of sales.
Exactly.
At its core, because I was trying to explain to people and not persuade them, but help them understand why they should use a buyer's agent. So
not only are you selling a brand new business, you're also selling a brand new concept. So Cohen Handler never had a track record to say this is what we've done. And then on top of that, the buyer's agent model didn't have a track record either. So you're selling on two fronts, right?
Correct. And then plus in Australia, everyone wants to tear you down.
Yeah.
So people want to see you fail. People like betting on you to fail because they don't want to see you win. That's part of the culture right here, the tall poppy. And so it was challenging. However, when you're just committed to your outcome, you play the long game, and you work your ass off at refining where your weaknesses are and working on your strengths and getting good guidance from mentors and really putting in the effort every single day, that compound effect, like the Atomic Habits, that book that just came out. It's just daily, diligent, disciplined habits every single day, like 7 days a week. You're going to outperform the people who take 3 days off. And so we were, I think, much more committed to our vision than a lot of people.
Just relentless.
And that's how we got to close to 80 staff. We trained our people. We had good systems. Our systems were everything. We had very good systems. And we were focused on transforming people within our company, which is why we grew a large company.
Right. And then exited that business, and now you've not only started another brand new business, but again, an industry in Australia that isn't large at all in the buyer's agent industry. So let people know what is that business, and why did you go from having a very successful, profitable business to going, you know what, I'm over this. I don't really want to, the money means nothing to me anymore. I want to start something completely new again. Like that. It's just so fascinating. Usually when someone, gets to the top of their game in a business, they're happy sitting at the top. The money's rolling in, it's successful, business is growing, they stay ahead of the curve and things are going really well usually. And then you just wanted to throw that away and go, okay, I want to do something else.
Yeah, the purpose of Cohen Handler for me was to create awareness at a consumer level,
right,
around the importance and the value of using a buyer's agent. It's still got a long way to go, but I felt like I'd ticked that box for me. So I'd satisfied that requirement. I'd grew a company. I'd helped a lot of people. I'd served a lot of clients. I learned a lot, failed a lot. However, the next problem that I saw in the industry for me that I identified was the buyer's agent headcount was not growing. It wasn't growing in Australia. I was watching it. So I thought, well, what's going on? And then I realised there's no one training them properly, and there's no one that's giving them systems. There's no framework. There's nothing to follow. So the Buyer's Agent Institute was born when I was at Cohen Handler to actually create more competition while we were there. It wasn't a recruitment strategy. It was actually to create more healthy competition with systems that I had and knew about to grow more buyer's agents. So again, I was very committed to an outcome, which was growing the buyer's agent headcount. And so the business just took off, mate. And like you, there's incredibly talented, smart, driven people who don't come from sales backgrounds, haven't run businesses, all that stuff, who love property, understand property, who I believe needed a framework and a community to be part of to change their career.
I agree. How does it feel to essentially be the reason people are leaving very high paying jobs, security, to chase a dream? Because a lot of people don't do it, right? Unless they get pushed over the edge, and I was one of those people, they will never do it. And essentially you're the reason people are doing this, and then within 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, they've had super success, they've never been happier in their life, and it all comes down to, seeing a course online or whatever, however they come across the course, doing that course, then coming in contact with you, and then you helping them overcome their fears and limiting beliefs to do something that they never thought they'd ever do.
It's very fulfilling. So
right.
At Cohen Handler, what I got most joy from was, and this is why we were the largest company by agent headcount, was because I love seeing people come in and transform their career. Like, that's what I got joy out of. So doing this at a much more scalable level, I love it. And the employment system is a program. That's what I fell into. It's a program. At school, we're not taught how to be entrepreneurs or business owners or manage debt or anything. The employment system started in the manufacturing area during the Industrial Revolution. People were taught to be employees. So as Matt Barry says from Freelance, we don't need more accountants and all that stuff. We need more people creating impactful businesses, solving problems, innovating. But the system isn't set up like that. So for me, helping people activate change by giving them a platform to say, hey, you're a switched on person. Whether you think you're successful or not, if you can then transition into becoming a business owner or working for someone in something that you enjoy, which could be buying property, if it is something like buying property is their solution, that's very fulfilling for me. So being able to activate that change for people, I love it. You're a key example.
Yeah. I was only thinking about it the other day. I'm thinking at the end of the day, everyone talks about, I'm going to do, I'd love to start a business in 3 years, or I'm going to do this, or when the time's right. And at the end of the day, the time's never right, and you never do it. And I was in that boat. Personally, I was I'm going to, I'm earning massive dollars in the mines. I'm a young guy. I thought I had freedom at the time to do what I want, holiday, whatever else. When I hit, 25, 26, when I've got all that stuff out of the way, then I'll start a business. And that was the story I was telling myself. But essentially that would have never happened, ever. And it was only that you pushed me that I actually did it. It was just the constant, whether it was the phone calls or the messages or the emails, it was what are you doing? Have you done this? And it still happens now, with the coaching thing, it's always pushing you to actually make change and actually take action, not just talk about things. No, not a lot of people wouldn't do it. And at the end of the day, how many people have been through the course now, do you think? Rough numbers?
Just under 600 now.
Right. To think 600 people that if they never seen your course, essentially 80% of them probably wouldn't have ever done anything. Must be pretty cool, right?
I love it. And obviously not everyone does well. And what's the definition of well? But I mean, everyone's at different... I was in Brisbane recently with 40 of the members, and everyone's at different stages. But the program's not just about becoming a buyer's agent.
Exactly.
It's much more deeper than that.
Once someone initially takes that leap, though, that's the hardest thing. Whether the buyer's agent model works for them or not, they've essentially already overcome the fear of leaving their job. Yeah. That's the biggest thing, right? And then once they've already felt the buyer's agent thing, they go, oh, this is not really for me. It's a lot easier for them then to transition into something else because they've already taken that first initial leap, I think. Well, that was my thought process anyway when I was doing it. I was like, well, if this doesn't work out, there's always something else.
Correct, and it's learning, right? It's education, it's learning, it's seeing a new paradigm of how to do things, how to run your life. And, you know, one of the guys in the program, a Central Coast guy, he's doing really well. He said to me, we caught up just after he did the program, so he hadn't worked with any clients yet, but he said, you know, even if I don't sign up any clients, even if I don't do any deals, what I've learned in this program is highly transferable. And it's going to help me with my new pivot with whatever I do. He's running his buyer's agent business now, he's doing well, but he saw value just in being able to see a different way to do things.
Yeah.
Because when you're in that employee mindset, he was at Telstra, you see through one lens. And I believe the world's changing rapidly and it's creating a lot more space for people to be more autonomous.
100%, and you can work from anywhere in the world, right?
Correct.
So, look, starting two businesses, two completely separate businesses, different business models, one having a headquarter, or lots of different headquarters in terms of offices, massive staff count, massive overheads, I'm sure of, to now having a business that's, what, a 3 or 4 man band, essentially?
4 of us, yeah. Get to grow the beard.
Grow the beard out,
The
have
hair.
no overheads, work from the laptop. It's probably more profitable than a business doing a lot more revenue than it. You've done you've done two completely different businesses, and essentially you're at the top of both of those businesses. If we were to say combine that and just use it as a business, not businesses, and say Benny is 22 now, just left school, how would you, whatever business it's in, whether you want to talk about being a buyer's agent or starting essentially an e-learning business, how would you do it differently? Like how essentially you've started BAI in this world, but how would you start a business as a 22-year-old and you want to be a business owner? How would you do it? Obviously, you probably wouldn't hire people, probably wouldn't get an office space. Like, it'd be completely different, right?
Yeah. I was really harsh to myself when I started out as an entrepreneur. Like and I still am to a degree where I just want to win, super competitive, treat myself sometimes like shit the way I talk to myself. Nothing's good enough. No acknowledgement, no self-acknowledgement. Very rarely do I acknowledge myself for what I do. I never really do think it's good enough. So the first thing I'll do going back would just be more around kindness to myself and kindness to other people. Like being a lot more kind trying to understand what that means, to be kind to yourself, and then being a lot more kind to other people as a result.
Right.
And so I think that's a practice in itself. I think a lot of people aren't kind to themselves, and that's why they buy objects and they do a lot of things. They don't love themselves enough. That's why the ego's so big and stuff. So I'd go about trying to understand that more, to be kind to myself,
right?
As a first practice.
And that would obviously overlap into making the business a lot more successful, right? Because if you're happier and more fulfilled, you generally do better work.
Your kindness heals people, and so if you can create a culture that's very focused on that, I think you're going to have a better business as well on all 360-degree fronts.
Right.
And so that's something that I would look to understand more. You're not taught kindness at school or happiness or anything. These basic principles you're not. It's not like we're going to a Buddhist school or something.
Right.
So that would be the first thing that I'd try and dive into more.
Okay. So instead of jumping into business and just wanting more, and never, like you said, never acknowledging what you're actually doing,
yeah,
you'd be more kind to yourself along the way.
Yeah, and to others
right.
as well. Because I think I was also quite harsh to the way I used to manage people and coach people, and I just wanted results, and so that would be something that I would do for myself.
Right. Next thing.
Profit over revenue.
Right.
Profit over revenue.
Right. So back in CH days, was it just chasing the revenue? Well, let's get our numbers bigger. Spend more on marketing. Spend more on hiring.
Revenue equals vanity. Profit equals sanity.
Right.
So I was chasing revenue. We were profitable. I've always run profitable businesses. We were.
What do you define as profitable? Like, what's a profitable business?
Well, it depends the sector you're in, but
obviously,
just chasing at least 20% plus.
Okay.
20% plus.
Right.
For profit of what you're doing.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people are focusing, unless you're running a tech startup or you're in that space where you're trying to acquire as many users as possible, or your IP so great that you're not really chasing profit. A lot of them aren't. But if you're in a service-based business like you're in, or buyers agents are in, your only asset is your management, your rent roll. That's your only asset, true asset that you can value is your rent roll. So if you don't have a rent roll, you want your P&L to be super profitable, because you've got nothing to sell effectively. And so what I learned earlier on was I was chasing, even though we're profitable, I was focusing more on revenue and less profit.
Right.
So right now, I'm focusing on profit.
Right.
So profit over revenue is something that
hence the reason your business is so lean, right?
Yeah. And I've learned a lot, and I'm building in a way where I'm really focusing on profit.
Because I think a lot of startups now, like you were talking about tech, especially if they're funded, they're unprofitable from day one.
Correct.
They're spending the money that they've been funded.
Yeah.
And every month it's a decline. And when that money runs out, it's either we go find more money or the business shuts up shop, right?
Yeah.
But at face value, they all look amazing. They're doing super successful. They're super good. Like we had a chat about business the other day, and what we're saying is it looks very, very sexy at face value, but when you actually look deeper, it's not what it seems.
Correct. Yeah. Revenue the other way. Revenue over profit works for some people because they're planning on an exit potentially, and it's going to work out very well for them. And it has, and I've seen it a lot. But for me, profit over revenue is something that I would look back on and focus on.
Right. What about from a practical standpoint, like inside a business, like hiring, or like how would you do things now? You obviously said you want to keep a business lean. Would you want to start a business where you have staff, or would you not?
I was actually looking at starting a third business last year. I was in the US, as you know, a lot, in California. And I was looking at raising capital.
San Fran, just hanging out with the lads.
Yeah, I was looking at raising capital, and I decided not to pursue that venture.
Right.
Because A, I didn't want shareholders, and B, I didn't want to get caught in that grind again. And it was going to be a large company that I was planning on building, and I didn't want to take it all on. So I hard decision, but I declined it. But to answer the question, hiring is always a challenge. Dealing with human beings and trying to read human beings. However, I've made a lot of bad hires in the past.
Right.
And I think if I was to look back, I would definitely take my time a lot more with hiring decisions. I used to be very impulsive, and I thought I was working on intuition, but a lot of the time I wasn't.
Yeah.
It was more on impulse. And I would look to hire out a lot more. So as opposed to waiting for when someone leaves and you've got to fill the seat, I would spend a lot more time. I used to do it towards the end, but meeting people constantly and seeing, could this person fill a role at one stage, or could they replace someone if someone's not performing?
So even if you weren't looking at hiring, you were just constantly meeting people, and if that you could see a fit for that potential, even if the person wasn't looking for a job, that was how you were approaching it.
Yeah, someone could resign at any time within the company. Loyalty, I don't know what loyalty is these days, but it's nice to know if someone leaves, you've got resumes or you've got contacts that you've met that are ready to fill the seat.
Right.
And you're not rushing to make an impulsive decision.
Was it nerve-wracking or to an extent? The thing with like you were saying, there's no asset. So essentially your asset is your people, right?
Yeah.
And in a business like that, if a top performer leaves your business, is that a nerve-wracking thing? Is that something that you think about constantly? If someone's doing a couple of $1 million in revenue and they leave your business, like that's essentially a lot of your business gone, because people follow the person, right? Yeah, in a business like ours. They're not there because of CH. They're there because of Ben Handler.
Yeah, it's a
to an extent.
Big hit.
Right.
Big hit.
And did that happen many times?
Yeah, we had people leave. Regularly, like over the time.
Yeah.
Very top performers. And I think anyone leaving is always tough.
Yeah.
Even if they're not a top performer. Like, I don't just look at someone's success by revenue.
Yeah.
Like, how do they talk about you and the company when you're not there? Their level of loyalty, their integrity, how they represent the business, how they serve their clients. What's their customer success will look like. There's other metrics and measurements to measure people. I just don't look at always revenue for people. Some people do. I never used to.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was something important to look at. So whenever someone left, it was always disappointing. It can affect culture. Like even if someone's not a good performer and they leave, they might have amazing relationships with everyone in the office. And when someone leaves, it damages culture.
Yeah.
And so whenever someone left, it was always tough for me.
Right.
I used to find that challenging.
Yeah.
I didn't see people
and
just...
did you take it personally? Like...
Sometimes.
Right. Because I think we were having a discussion the other day, and it was around like... Usually, there's only 3 reasons people leave a business. It's either got to do with like financial, someone's offered them more money, or they can earn more money somewhere else. Culture, they're not getting along with the company. Or probably 2. That's probably the 2 main reasons, right? It's either financial or relationships.
Yeah,
I mean, is it something you take personally? Like, if someone leaves your business and you felt like you had an amazing relationship with that person and you didn't see it coming, like, is that something you beat yourself up or previously beat yourself up about?
There was times I did, but I'd always wish that, like, if someone was leaving my company and starting their own business, I was always inspired by that. Right. I was like, you know what, I've given you some form of inspiration to get out there as an entrepreneur and do your own thing. So I'd recognize them internally for that, or I'd tell them verbally. Right. But I was always very happy for them. Right. I wasn't, oh no, this is competition now and what a problem. But when the founders of Instagram, Facebook bought Instagram, and when they left Facebook, I think 2 years ago, at the time they could leave, and they made a comment publicly saying, well, if we were you don't leave a company because you're happy. Like you typically don't leave a company when things are going great.
Exactly.
You leave when there's cultural issues. You leave when you're not getting remunerated accordingly. You leave when they're not supporting your growth trajectory. You leave for reasons.
Yeah.
And so if a company's there to fully support you and understand you and help you meet your objectives and goals, you typically will have a long-standing career. Like John McGrath's had a lot of, like for real estate, for example, I mean, he's had people there for 20 years plus. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And same with Bressy Whitney. They've got people who've been there for a very long time. And obviously people do leave in a short time, but they've got a lot of people who've been there for a long time. And I think that's a true reflection on the company.
A testament to the...
Oh, especially in real estate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in real estate.
Yeah. Mate, I think people are going to find a lot of value in this chat. A lot of value. I think it's super inspiring being like... You've got so much knowledge and experience in such a short period of time. Like, what are you now, 35?
36.
36. And you're talking about 2 businesses that you've built over the last 15 years. And you're talking like you've been in business for like 30 or 40 years. Do you think that's because of the coaches, the people you've had around you in your time? Because another unique thing about you and what a lot of people don't realise is you have so many different coaches in so many different aspects of life, right? You've got business coaches, wellness coaches. There's so many different aspects to your life that you get help in. Do you think that's been a massive help in your success?
Yeah. So I've had one coach that's more of a life coach, like more about wellness and health for around 4.5 years.
Right. And
then I've had a business coach for around 7.5 years.
Right.
And I've just recently got another style of executive coach, like a leadership coach that I've had for about 1.5 years.
Right.
And I think it's very important the environment you surround yourself in that will dictate the outcomes that you get. And as you know, I've also got a coaching business that I do as well, on top of everything. But it's very important to be guided by, I believe, people who've been there, actually been there and done it. There's a lot of coaches who haven't been in the trenches that I look at. I mean, it happens. Like some sports coach, b-ball coaches haven't played basketball. So there can be great coaches, but I like to work with coaches who have actually been in the trenches and can guide you based on their experience. But looking back at the coaches, what I've learned the most from all of them, outside of the business coaches as well, is your health comes before everything. So right now for me, health's the most important thing. I'm exercising minimum twice a day, 5 days a week, but I'm exercising 7 days, but twice a day, 5 days. And if you can't show up for yourself mentally and physically, how are you going to serve your clients, your family, your friends? So my health right now is more important than family. It's more important than my relationships I've got. It's the most important thing right now. So that's what I prioritize right now.
And it wasn't something you prioritized in the past, was it?
It was I've always exercised, but now I'm very careful the food I eat. Like a lot of people think I'm a bit fussy. Like I was in Brisbane yesterday at a very good cafe on James Street. You'd think it's a very good restaurant. And I said, are the eggs, what are the eggs? Are they free range or caged? They said caged. So I didn't eat them. I'm always checking what I'm eating. Like farm salmon, I don't eat salmon a lot of the time because it's farm. So I'm just cautious what I'm putting in the body and stuff.
Right. And that's from self-education?
A lot of the system. You don't hear about what's going on with a lot of the produce and stuff, but I believe it kills a lot of people, the food we're eating.
Right.
It's so toxic that it's actually killing us.
Yeah. You've changed my life in terms of health, as much as you may not think that, but like things like yoga, like I would have never done it, and Sammy B behind the camera. But I'm not that type of person that would ever do something like that. And you sort of changed the way I now think instead of making it an assumption before you do something and then make the decision of it. So I had a pre-assumption of yoga. I'm like, what the fuck would I do yoga for? I just look like a fucking idiot in a room full of girls. No idea. And then I did it and it was incredible. So it was like, making judgment before you're actually doing something. So I tried vegetarian for a while. I enjoyed it, but I was just low on energy because I can't prep food and I'm fucking useless at that sort of stuff. So you've definitely changed the way I think about health and what I'm putting in my body to an extent. It's important. I mean,
we'll save that one off the record. No, but it's important. Like I try to do a sunrise most mornings.
Right.
The sunlight during sunrise and sunset we don't need to go into it now, but has a very profound impact on your mitochondria. And the mitochondria gets damaged a lot by pollution and toxins in food. So sunrise, grounding on the sand.
Not wearing shoes. Everyone always questions me not wearing shoes in the office. And I say, mate, speak to Benny. Speak to the lads.
Yeah. And just being in salt water, nature, grounding, all that stuff's good. Yoga. Yeah, I do that every 5 mornings. It all works.
Yeah, 100%. Mates, to end this out, it's what I do with every guest. I let the guest ask me a question. So I'll put you on the spot here, but one question for me so I can give some value as well, and then we'll wrap it up. Hit me with it.
What advice would you give to people who are stuck in a job, whatever it is, that they're not connected with, they're not fulfilled with?
Right.
What advice would you give them to take the courage to consider other options?
Yeah. I can only talk from my own personal experience, but for me, what I did and what I overthought was the financial side of things. I had quite a large portfolio, had quite a large income, but I had a lifestyle to go with that, right? And you get accustomed to that lifestyle. So the biggest thing for me was being calculated in terms of this is what my expenses are, lower them to an absolute minimum, but you still need X amount of dollars to support that lifestyle while you're in the infancy stage of the business. So for me, and the advice I would give, make sure you're very calculated, because it's all well and good to say, let's go jump out and start a new business, not think about things, get 6 months in and not turn out the way you want, and then you're up shit creek. Especially you have bills and family and all that stuff. And that's what plays on people's minds, right? They're so accustomed to earning an income every single week, which pays for the kids' school fees and the lifestyle and the house and the car and all the rest of it. And it's so hard just to go, boom, let's turn that tap off and go into a business where you're not going to earn an income straight away, or it's not going to be able to be consistent because it's a brand new business. So I would say be very, very calculated, but at the end of the day, you've also got to think, what's the worst case scenario? Which is what I did. I was like, what's the worst case scenario? I ran out of money. I'm disappointed in myself. I've got to go get another shit fucking job because there's 4,000 of those bad boys on seek.com. And that was it. Like, you just have to go, okay, if I do this properly, be very calculated, but what is the worst case scenario? And it's generally not that bad. What I think, anyway. And look, at the end of the day, it's how hard you work. So, I mean, I've been in this business now for, six months or something? Not even 4 months, something, I don't know. And to think, would I be here? Before I started, I would never in the world would have thought would be in the position I am right now. All my goal was to match my income that I was on in the mines in the first year. And I've done that within 3 months or something, yeah.
It's good advice.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, I think that's a really good one.
Well, that's it. Like, what is the worst case scenario? Like, our worst case scenario in Australia is start a new business and not, to think about worst case scenarios in the world, there's a lot of people a lot worse off than you. And a lot of the time, people won't do things because of financial. That is it. People will not do things because of the money. Like, no one else does any other reason not to do something. Because if there was no such thing as currency in the world and you could do whatever you wanted, people would do whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't matter if you failed, because failure to people is not having the financial rewards.
Yeah.
So that would be my one piece of advice.
Yeah, solid. No, it's good.
Thank you. Well, mate, thank you very, very much for coming on to Flamingo Sundays. Everyone's going to love this, I think. A couple of lads up in Newey. Popping off. And look, if you want to get in contact with Ben, you're on all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, the BAI, if you want to take that leap into the new world, the new business of a buyer's agent.
You.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.